Well, welcome everyone. It is wonderful to see you all and to include you in today's program. Excelsior University, the Center for Social Justice, and the Women's Robe Team are thrilled to be commemorating and celebrating International Women's Day and Women's History Month with a panel discussion by amazing women leaders of our institution. Now, before we have the opportunity to introduce our panelists today, our president, Dr. David Scable, has kindly offered to share a few words with us about Women's History Month. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Daniel, and hello, everybody. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter declared the week of March 8th as National Women's History Week, urging everyone in the United States to participate in celebrating women and their powerful contributions to society and the nation. Carter's declaration acknowledged that while their accomplishments too often go unsung, the achievements, leadership, courage, and strength of the women who built America have been as vital as those of the men whose names we well know. This year's Women's History Month theme, Women Who Advocate for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, recognizes women who understand the need to eliminate bias and discrimination from individuals' lives and from the institutions that are part of our professional and social experience. It also recognizes women who speak up and lead the change we need in the fields and in our communities and in our government. The members of today's panel represent the richness of diversity, thought leadership, and empowerment that helps us lead and drive Excelsior University's management and change. We very much appreciate you joining today's discussion about inclusion and equity, mentorship and advocacy, leadership, and the ways we can further engage in the difficult conversations we need to have to advance change. So thank you, and back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, David. Before we get started with the panel, I would first like to name key leaders and partners of today's program. To start, I'd like to thank Pamela Jimenez for your leadership and facilitation of today's panel. Thank you, Pam. I'd also like to thank Linda Holt and Marketing for your support in the facilitation of today's program. Thank you both. And of course, we're thrilled to have each of you panelists today. Pam, if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started.
Sure, thank you. And I'd like to thank also, just include in my gratitude, Maria Sparks, who branded the bios. So if you look at the chat, you'll see that we have put together the bios of our wonderful panel today. So thank you, David, and thank you, Daniel. So now I have the distinct privilege to introduce today's panelists, a group of accomplished women leaders at Excelsior University. They exemplify the meaning of hard work at the institution and gracefully lead the way in their respective areas and support our mission of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Today, we will be discussing their leadership and advancing change at Excelsior University within their respective roles. So Q&A, after the discussion, we can have Q&A, and Daniel and I would be monitoring. I would be remiss also if I didn't highlight and thank all the women leaders across the institution that are not on this panel. We have so many that merit gratitude and honor, and we only had an hour. So my gratitude to all of you out there as well. This afternoon's panel members include Tracy Cadwell, Associate Dean of Liberal Arts, College of Liberal Arts and Science, Aaron Kupel, Chief Communications Officer, Robin Goodrich, Executive Dean, College of Nursing and Health Sciences, Jamie Hicks Fergan, Associate Vice President of Development and Alumni Engagement, Elizabeth Ireland, Director of Academic Advisement, and Laurie Williams, Chief of Staff. So thank you all for being here today and for giving us your time in a very busy time for all of you. So I'll start us off by asking the first question, and this one is directed to Elizabeth and Laurie. In a world where it takes courage to advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion, when some aim to discredit and misinterpret these terms, which often just means being authentic to oneself and what we stand for, we would like to know what defines you. Elizabeth?
Okay. I did take some notes. I jotted down a few things because it's a big question, right?
Yeah.
And I think the first thing that jumps out at me for myself is I've always been one who looked at what's fair, what's equitable, and being honest and straightforward, having integrity, and I appreciate integrity from others. Challenging stereotypes, because I think that's a thing sometimes we all fall prey to, you know, certain biases that we have, and I like to challenge those. But I'm also looking for connection, and touching base with people, checking in, and just knowing the people around me, who they are. I'm curious by nature, so I'm notorious for asking a lot of questions, and many times I've had people kind of volunteer me to go find out the details because I'm just used to asking questions. I feel like I'm going to ask, and if people don't want to say something, they'll let me know, you know, but I don't want to ever not ask a question because I decided they wouldn't answer, you know. And I always walk through the world trying to keep a sense of humor because it's hard out there. We're hurtling through, you know, the universe. It can be challenging, and so I'm big on trying to find the funny in whatever I'm doing.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Lori?
I'll piggyback on a couple of things that Elizabeth shared. You know, relationships define me as a family member, as a friend, as a neighbor, and remembering those parts of who I am is really important to my work as a leader. I think about our students and the roles that they play outside of being students, and am reminded of a time in my life when I was a single mom for 5 years when I was young. I now have adult sons, but they were little back then, and that really helped to define me. And I think that experience really helped me to better connect with the experiences of many of our adult learners. Working, caring for kids, working on my master's degree at the time, not ever having enough money or time. And that was a long time ago, but I'll never forget that experience and what it means for many of our students. And remembering that through our work, we're literally helping students and their families move forward socioeconomically. Another thing that Elizabeth shared was about curiosity. Curiosity also defines me. I'm always learning. I don't think I'll ever live long enough to get bored in life. I'm always reading and learning. And right now I'm taking a course in prompt engineering to learn more about how it works and how I can use AI to improve my work and the work of my team members. And I think it's important for us to stay abreast of what's happening and keep that curiosity going. I'll also say that, you know, I think I was socialized for a long time to define myself in terms of what I accomplish, what I do. And while I'm proud of myself for my accomplishments, I think it's most important to my identity that I see myself more now as who I am, just as a human being. And, you know, is my behavior in alignment with my values? So I like to think that my values, which influence what I say and do, are a part of who I am, and so also define me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Daniel?
Lauren and Elizabeth. So I have the next question, and I'd like to ask you, Tracy, and also Elizabeth, if you could share a little bit about how do you define your leadership? It seems to me that, particularly thinking of the theme of Women's History Month this year, right, and women who advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the circumstances in which we find ourselves, right? Leadership and the leadership of women is critical for our ability to progress as a society and to grow in the way that we need to. How do you find your leadership? How would you express it?
One of us should go first.
Tracy, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm very happily a servant leader. And just a little bit about servant leadership for people that aren't familiar with it. It's a style of leadership that really prioritizes people, the growth of people, their well-being, and empowerment of employees. And for me, it starts with creating a really inclusive environment that does the Excelsior meet people where they are. So when you have a team, you understand their strengths, where they might struggle and need support, and you work on assisting them in participating in the institutional goals, developing themselves to do a better job of achieving. Servant leadership definitely puts employees first, so it's a little bit different than other leadership styles, and it allows an organization to grow through the employee's commitment and engagement with the institution. It can lead to fostering trust, accountability, growth, and inclusion in the workplace, so you're really valuing individuals for everything that they bring. And the kind of cool thing about servant leadership is the studies show that servant leaders can impact the people who report up to them by making more servant leaders. And even if you don't choose to become a servant leader, the ideals of respect, equity, and inclusion are things that get paid forward throughout the institution. And I think it's really well aligned with the CARES credo, particularly compassion, respect, excellence, and service, and with our values of equity, inclusion, and collaboration.
I love everything that you just said. I do. It resonates with me really deeply because I think the things that I would say about my leadership style, completely collaborative. I love being part of a team. I love being supportive of the team. I'm prone to asking, what do you need from me? How can I support you? And I will ask for support when I need it, so, but I also feel like, being inclusive is so important because I don't want it to just be about my opinion. I want us to put our heads together. Let's figure this out. Is there a better way to do this? Is there a different way to do this? It doesn't have to be my way. I want people to align and take ownership. And so I feel like, if we're all coming up with a strategy and pulling it together, that's more likely to happen. And then, then when there's a mistake, well, we all are in that together too, right? So it can be a learning experience for everybody, which the mistakes happen, but I think, as long as we can learn from them, that's so important. I think being inclusive is so important all the time. And so I recognize that some of my staff, they may not feel comfortable saying something one-on-one. And so I give them the opportunity to say it maybe as a part of a group. And then there's the reverse that happens. Some people don't want to say something in front of the group. So that's why one-on-ones are so important to me, because I want to pull in everybody and take their temperature. And again, find out what's going on and just know where they're at, what they're doing. And a lot of that centers around just being communicative. I always think about the times in my life that I've struggled with leadership, when I was reporting to someone, and sometimes it's just feeling sandbagged. So if I don't have an answer for somebody, I'm going to tell them I don't have an answer. But I want to try and give people context for why we're doing what we're doing, when we're doing what we're doing, how we got there, why we didn't do something, so that people know that they're heard, that I see them and I hear them. And I think the last thing is how much I appreciate my team, when they're doing good work, when they're working hard, when I make that a priority to make sure that people know that I appreciate them, because I do. I really do.
Thank you, Tracy and Elizabeth. I have another question, a follow-up of the leadership question, and I'd like to ask this question to Jamie, and then if Lori, you can also share your thoughts and your insight. But following up on the topic of leadership, leadership is so important for organizations and for our communities. And in this moment, it seems, at least to me, that leadership can be such a powerful source of role modeling, of change, of innovation, of encouragement, of empowerment that we so need for us to pursue a better future. So when you think of leadership, what change would you like to see in general, leadership in general, and What is success to you?
That's a great question, Daniel, and I've been giving some thought to it over the course of the past couple of weeks, actually. So I think one thing that I would like to change in leadership is the perception that it's about control and a title. For me, leadership is about actions and influence. And so what that might look like in the day-to-day is knowing your team, knowing how they're feeling, to Elizabeth's point, knowing where strengths are and, where weaknesses are, and utilizing folks and trying to help them build their strengths and their weaknesses together, knowing the pinch points in your unit, knowing the pinch points of the organization, and working together to affect change. So I think sometimes people think that, people are just behind the scenes in a boardroom, just playing with stick figures, and that we're not. It's really thoughtful, and it's about how we put ourselves out there. And that leads to, what is success? I mean, gosh, as a leader, success is obviously results, and seeing how your actions as a team together have achieved those results. Personally, success is about staying true to my values and helping align those with the goals of the organization and the team, and transcending my environment, right? Like, be a Girl Scout, good Girl Scout, leave it better than you found it. Go in, do it, clean it up, make sure others know, really be transparent about the work that you're doing and the why behind it, understanding what the motivation is. And then achieving those results with action is what success looks like to me. Moving together as a team, no matter what the day is, because as Elizabeth said, it's hard out there. People have a lot going on. There's just a lot going on in the world. So if you come in and you know where everybody is, and then you can kind of move through your day with that in mind, that feels like great success. And that's something that a leader can affect, right? By their actions and their influence.
Thank you, Jamie. Lori?
Well, I promise Jamie and I did not connect ahead of time. We didn't see each other's responses. But I agree that success in leadership is not just about those that have a particular title. And for me, the change that I'd like to see in leadership is helping everyone lead from where they are. And that's what success looks like for me. And it also means developing the competencies of leaders in everyone across the organization. And I'll just share a few that I think would be important to success. Courage in speaking out and sharing a multiplicity of views. I think that sharing your passion for your work and for what our students' needs are is really important. I think that setting a good example for others through our actions, how we listen, what we say, being accountable to do what we say we're going to do, and supporting others in their work in a visible way. I also think it's important for everyone to develop the capacity to use data to drive decision-making. For me, this is a really important aspect of leadership from everyone's role. And recognizing that there are many biases that can get in the way of clear thinking. For example, we need to call out when we see decisions being made on too small of a number, overconfidence in a small sample size, or when we see our colleagues seeking information that'll just confirm the bias that they already have, their subjective opinion, and then justify what may be an inaccurate perception to begin with, that confirmation bias. And I think this is especially true with respect to what our students want and need. We need to really ask our students and listen to what they tell us about what their needs are. I think successful leaders empower others, and especially other women in the context of the discussion that we're having here today. And I think this is one of the best ways that we can embody our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion approach, our JEDI approach here. The best leaders naturally want to help others and empower others, and thereby establish the trust and respect that's needed to be seen as a leader. And they develop a strong tolerance for ambiguity. This allows us to change or modify our decisions and strategies based on new information.
Thank you, Jamie and Lori. Pam?
Yeah, I love that. I read somewhere, I think it was Forbes or MIT Sloan, had an article where somebody said to Lori's point, you know, do your research, have the data, and even if your voice trembles, share it. You have something to share, but first do your research and have the data, and just get it out, even if your voice trembles. And I always remember that, and Lori just reminded me of that, so thank you for that. Okay, so Pew Research reported last month that women have made significant gains, but there's still a few gaps in our quest for equality and equity. One gain would be women outnumber men in the US college-educated workforce, now making up 51% of those 25 and older. So it's time that we lift our men up. We got to bring them in. And then a gap that they highlighted was women still lag in top leadership positions in business and government. That being said, I will direct my next question to Jamie and Robin. So given what you know now about leadership, about being a woman in a leadership position, what would you tell your younger self or young women trying to reach upper management positions? Jamie or Robin?
Hi, I'll jump in. I know Jamie, she went already. So I think what I would tell my younger self is to enjoy the journey. Okay, not try to control everything. And just because you do X doesn't mean Y is going to be the result. Life doesn't work that way. And also to stay grounded and find your balance through all of the uncertainty and the ups and downs of really just life. I don't think it's unique to women or leaders or anything. It's just, life definitely happens. Be kind to yourself.
I love that, Robin.
Thanks.
I would tell my younger self, well, a couple of things. I would probably put it into some buckets. So, first of all, I would talk about the importance of networking. I would tell my younger self that doesn't actually have to happen at a conference or a big event. It can happen one-on-one over coffee with someone in a different unit of your organization. Networking is just about building relationships. And I think sometimes that can feel intimidating. If you walk into a room of 200 people, where do you start? And I would say start small. Start small with a network and get to know someone who does something different than you do. The next, I would say, try to find a mentor. Sometimes easier said than done, but great leaders grow other leaders. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to becoming a leader. So talk to people in senior level positions, talk about their path and how they got there, and finally, feedback. Sometimes we tend to focus on the negative feedback. And what I've done over the years is anytime I get a note of thanks or gratitude, I tuck it in a special file. And I think a lot of people have done this. I've heard it. And sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I just pull it out, especially on days that feel impossible. I remember that sometime I did something well, and then I'm like, okay, I know I can do this. So positive feedback has a lasting effect. So give it and take it, if that makes sense. So when you have an opportunity, tuck it away and go back and read that feedback, but also remember to give positive feedback, because I think it goes a long way over the course of people's careers.
That's wonderful. Anyone else want to take a stab at that one? What would you tell your younger self in light of everything we know now?
I would say figure out what you're really good at. Don't try and be good at everything out there. Work with others, have them highlight your strengths, and build a network of support around you that can help you fill in the gaps and learn how to handle what you're not so great at.
That's wonderful.
I love that, Erin. I think what I would piggyback on what Erin said is to, maybe try your hand at something new, because you may not even know what you're good at yet, right? It might be a big surprise, like, oh, wow, like I'm good at that and I really like it too. So thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you. This is powerful. Yesterday I had the opportunity to participate in a panel of women presidents of universities. And they were asked about, how could men be good allies? What do we need to do to engage and inspire advocacy and be good advocates and partners? And one thing they mentioned is stop expecting women to demonstrate capacity first in order to be acknowledged. And another president responded and said, yeah, another way of saying that is promote women on their potential as much as you promote them on their record. But that really was powerful to hear. And I'm really curious from the panel today, how can we be better allies as men? And what do we need to do to engage and inspire male advocates and partners in our systems? I'd like, if possible, for Robin to start answering, and then Aaron, and if others want to also jump in, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, so I've been voluntold, Daniel, but this is a great question. I was, as you were sharing your, the meeting that you were at, I was just like, wow, that has to be like a really amazing group of, women presidents, individuals. And I don't know, like for me, I just really love my team, like my team, whether it's my first team, that my executive team in the college or in the school, the executive leadership at the institution. And I just feel like it's just so critically important that we're aligned on a strategy, right? And we're all kind of driving towards the same goals. I love the fact that we have representation of men and women on our team, and that we can, I learn from everyone. I learned from the great male leaders that I have on my team and that I've worked with, and the female leaders. So that's really where I'm very like a relationship person. So I just love the diversity on my teams, and the individuals, right, and their individual strengths, in addition to gender, but just like the individual strengths, where they come from, what they learned along the way, and what they're willing to share with me to help my growth.
Thank you, Robin. Aaron?
That's wonderful, Robin. I believe that we can all do better and be better allies for each other just by listening. If we can all get more comfortable sharing our own experiences and be willing to really learn from what others have gone through, and where they want to go, we'll lead better teams, we'll find better communities, we will just become better people ourselves to give and get support, and to just have a deeper understanding of the individuals that we work with on a day-to-day basis. I've had some wonderful female mentors in my years. I've been so fortunate to work with. And I've also been really lucky that some of my strongest allies and advocates have been men. And I think I contribute a lot of that to the network that I've built and the people that I surround myself with. You have to find people that get you, that understand who you are, what you're trying to achieve, and are willing to support you, and that you feel comfortable talking to when you need advice or support, when you want a new opportunity, just to have good sounding boards out there. So I think we can all do better if we take that time, which is so precious and valuable, and we don't have enough of, to really get to know each other a little bit better.
I'll share too.
Please.
I think that men can be wonderful allies in reminding everyone of the unique issues that women face. Most women provide the majority of what I like to call domestic labor in the home. Childcare, shopping, cleaning, cooking, organizing the social life of the family, figuring out doctors and dentists and, all the different medical visits, without which our society and our economy really couldn't function. I know it's changing, particularly with the younger generation. Male allies for women invite women to share in meetings, to present new ideas, to take on leadership roles on projects, give their leadership visibility, and to inspire and engage our male advocates. We should invite them to speak up on behalf of women. Women don't have to do all the advocating for women, to your point, Erin.
Thank you for sharing. Pam?
Of course, my dog wants to chime in right in the middle of the webinar. I apologize. In the Leadership Challenge book by Kuznos and Posner, they found, interestingly enough, Lori and Elizabeth alluded to this and said this before, they found data to confirm that leadership is a relationship, because leaders never get extraordinary things accomplished by themselves. In fact, leaders mobilize others to want to struggle for a shared aspiration. In your relationships with your folks and those who work with you, how do you redirect conversations that may be perceived as negative when trying to empower your team and communicate a decision? So if Erin could take it first, could answer for us?
Thanks, Pam. I
Sure.
sometimes tease that awkward and uncomfortable conversations are a big part of my job. Right. Whether it's sharing information with our wonderful President Scable on the line here, or navigating a media conversation, sometimes you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and really understanding what exactly your message is and how it might land with that audience. What do you need to do to kind of get that point across in the way that's going to be most helpful and useful? And then build trust so that it really can be a dialogue and a conversation from there, right? You had the message that you need to share, but what happens next, and how do you facilitate that conversation?
Thank you. I'm not surprised, you're the Chief Communications Officer. Tracy, and anyone else after Tracy want to take a stab at it? How do you redirect conversations that may be perceived as negative when trying to empower your team and communicate a decision?
Thanks, Pam.
Sure.
So I think it's interesting, David, that you in the University Updates this morning talked a lot about change and being able to fail and move forward and grow quickly, and how fast-paced we're working in higher ed right now. And one of the things I've noticed being here for so many years is during periods of rapid change, people get very anxious and nervous, and a lot of big decisions have to be made very quickly. We've pivoted, a lot of institutions are pivoting. And when that happens, I think, sometimes people feel unheard in the process, they become negative, and I've had to handle those situations a lot. And the first step is really, I think, talking to the people or persons who are having feelings that may be perceived as negative and really understanding, like stop everything and just really listen. What is the person talking about? How do they feel about it? What evidence do they have for their position? Don't try to solve a problem. Don't try to do anything, but just let somebody talk to you. Hear them, hear what they're trying to say. And then you're able to stop and focus on sort of like what Erin's talking about. How do you message how you're feeling? How do you provide feedback to people about your experience and not make it sound negative, make it sound productive, reframe a conversation and add on, give energy back to what's happening at the institution. And you can do that by developing really strong, again, Erin, same, like you develop strong relationships with your team so that they trust you, they feel you're a support for them and an advocate for them, and really walk that line that's very difficult sometimes, which is fully supporting leadership decisions. At the same time, allowing people to say what they have to say, listen, try to help them frame a conversation or bring information up the chain so that people feel heard. In the moment, if people are feeling negative, I find it's useful to reframe a situation, move back from a particular problem to something more general, usually something we can all agree on, like, okay, yeah, this issue right here, issue X, might be a problem and you're feeling negative about it, but can't we all agree that Y and Z are awesome and we're all happy about those things and we're all moving in that direction towards those goals? So how can we take this thing that doesn't feel great and move our positioning around so that we're more aligned with what's positive at the institution? And what I learned in Leadership Fellowship was this great idea. Well, it's not a great idea, but it's sloping, and it's something that can happen when several people get together and the conversation starts to roll downhill in a negative direction. People kind of feed off each other. And you can stop that very easily if everybody is aware that that is a possibility in a conversation. So in our team, when we're having a conversation, if it starts to get going down that direction, we will all stop each other and say, okay, we're sloping a little, let's reframe this and get it going back in a different direction. So those are some things I use.
That's awesome. I never thought about that. Reframing the conversation in the middle of the conversation so that it doesn't go downhill all the way. Anyone else? Okay, I'll ask the last question before we get into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So for all the panelists, how do you ensure your team is diverse and inclusive?
Well, I'll jump in.
Oh,
You
go
want
ahead,
to
Lori.
Robin?
No, I was just gonna, yeah, I was just going to, you know, just a few comments about how we put some intention around, you know, building our teams, right? I mean, it's certainly, you know, it starts with, you know, just, you know, identifying the key, you know, qualifications and skills, knowledge, et cetera, for, you know, for the role. You know, making sure that, you know, working with human resources and identifying the top talent for the role, and our inclusive interviewing has truly helped, you know, us to identify those that, you know, that are best qualified for the role, and that also will help us as a university to meet our strategic objectives, and one of them, you know, being in the JEDI space. So as a higher ed administrator as well, I think it's important to be intentional with hiring, especially with our faculty. Hiring is a special place because our faculty are the direct line to the student. And it is, you know, it is very much, you know, really great and powerful experience for students to engage with a diverse faculty. So just a few thoughts on that.
Thank you, Robin. I wanted to share a little bit about the Chief of Staff Communications Guidelines, which speaks to diversity and inclusivity. One of our guidelines is be ready to share the space. And we've got a number of sub-guidelines underneath that one, including being open to others' ideas and perspectives, being proactive in soliciting others' voices and perspectives and in multiple ways, asking others to help you understand their idea and their perspective, and to communicate in an inclusive way through your wording, tone, nonverbal communication language. And if a lot or new information has been shared, ask at a later date if people have questions, because they might just be so overwhelmed with hearing over everything at first that they can't even respond with their thoughts or ideas or questions about it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Thank you.
I think, you know, as far as promoting inclusivity, always making sure, and I know we've mentioned this throughout the panel today, but, you know, creating safe spaces and building trust, that will foster inclusivity, you know, making sure that we're collaborating, understanding people's work styles. Maybe people need more time. You know, we've got introverts and extroverts and everything in between. So if we're on a meeting and, you know, folks might need more time to process that thought. So being able to go and follow up with that person and say, hey, did you think about X, Y, and Z? In which direction do you think we should go? Knowing that person and knowing that they might not be ready to speak up in the moment. They just need some more time to process. And I think as far as diverse teams is always trying to surround yourself with people who you can learn from, and who, you know, have a skill set that's completely different than yours. I love that, because we are constantly learning. We're showing up, we're in a learning environment. We're all, you know, working in education, trying to help our students learn. And it's only fitting that we are learning and we're trying to do better each and every day. So making sure that our teams aren't just all, you know, kind of the same personality, but that they're coming up up to us and giving us new ideas and fresh perspectives and welcoming that and finding ways within the team to encourage those conversations.
Thank you. So I'll wrap up the panel today. I'd like to thank this entire panel for your valuable insight today. You know, we at the Center for Social Justice, we have a lot of guests come in throughout the year to commemorate special days. And they're usually all external guests, and they're wonderful people, and we learn and grow so much from them. But it's always nice to lift the voices of our own, right? It's always nice to resonate with the information that you give us, because you know our culture, you know our students, you know the people that work for you and that work within the organization. And so I think that when putting this together, it was only fitting to hear from our very own. And I'd also just like to close by saying that this entire panel reminds me of one of my favorite poets' quotes, Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And in every room that I've been with this entire panel, whether it be Zoom or in person, I can't quote you, but I certainly can remember that you made me feel a certain way. So thank you all for being here. Daniel?
Thank you, Pam, and thank you for your insight and the wisdom that you have shared with us. It's really wonderful to learn from you. We have already some questions and comments in the space, so I'm going to start with the first one, and then Pam, maybe we can alternate throughout the list. We have one from Tom Dance. First off, he says, "Thank you all for your leadership and courage today in sharing your voice. I'd love to hear from your perspectives what habits or skills you focused on to become the impactful leaders you are today."
I'll jump in for that one. I think you have to remind yourself often that it is a marathon and not a sprint. Dedication and hard work will take you far in your career. But if you're not finding some balance and self-care along the way, you're going to burn out pretty quickly. So make sure that you're connecting to the institution and the mission and the work that you're doing every day. And make sure you're taking some time and space for yourself to build the things that make you passionate about the work that you do, so that you really can stay engaged and grow. And then I know it's been said quite a bit today, but intentionally building relationships along the way, I think has been one of the most impactful things in my career. And I'd encourage everyone to maybe get outside of your comfort zone, make a new connection, and really start to build that relationship.
I'd like to piggyback on what Erin said also. I think it's about building your team and the talent that you have on your team. That, at least for me, it's made that intentional, hiring, teamwork, having a set of norms and a clear strategy has contributed to my leadership development. And I find it to be a lot of fun too.
I think another habit or skill to think about is advocating for yourself and sharing a vision of what you want for your own career, and then having the courage to ask for it. And the response you get may be, "Oh, I didn't know you were thinking that way," or "Yes, I see that in you too, but not yet. Here are the skills and competencies I want you to work on in order to be able to get there." But sharing your own vision for yourself first, and then for those that you work for, can be really helpful.
So I'll take the next.
I'll just add
go ahead.
to that, while advocating for yourself, just remember to thank and show gratitude, and give credit along the way for everyone that's helping you out, because no one expects you to do it all yourself or to figure it all out by yourself. So that to me was a big learning and pivot point for me, learning to just ask for the help and support and give credit and thanks when I got it.
Thank you. So I'll take the next question from Bridget Fisher. Given Laurie's comments about domestic labor, I was wondering if anyone would be willing to comment on what has worked well in work-life balance, particularly for those of us who are early in our careers and would like to be able to learn and grow in both our careers and personal lives. Panelists?
A family calendar. Because there's a lot going on. And I think sharing information, so again, maybe just clear communication, but not everyone's fully paying attention, right, all the time. And people have different things going on, and households are busy when you get home. I don't know about everybody else's households, but mine erupts at about 5:30. Like there's just everyone's doing everything. The dog is barking, everyone's getting home, everybody's hungry. And trying to make sure that we tend to everybody's needs, but also making sure that things are documented and that people know when things are, so no one is guessing, right? The biggest pinch point can be a communication failure, right, in the home. Who's taking the child to the doctor's appointment, the dog to the vet, your own appointment? So I think shared calendars and just being clear, also having conversations on the weekend about what's to come, right? What's ahead for the week? What do we have to do? What do we need to tackle as a family? And when do we have time to watch our show? Like what really kind of scheduling that so it doesn't just fly by in the week. So that's one strategy that we've employed in our house, and it seems to be working well some weeks.
Jamie, I was going to add a touch of realism to that and to just have a sense of humor, right? It's not always going to go smoothly. There's no one thing. It's not going to be easy most days. But to make sure, you're communicating and being fair with everyone. And I think you and I have had this conversation before, like if your kids are old enough and they're getting out their homework, like be honest that you're sitting down to get back to some work that you have as well. I think I underestimated the impact that would have on my kids when I went back to work when they were young, that they saw me working and trying and moving ahead and doing things that I enjoyed. I thought that was a detriment, and they look back on it and think, wow, look at what mom did. That was really awesome.
The calendar is a big one. I mean, I was tied to a calendar. I remember I went through a phase where I only wrote things in a calendar with a pencil because I needed to erase a lot. Time management is so critical, but I also think being willing to ask for help and be willing to receive help in places that might surprise you. Sometimes it was, my son's friend's mom, the mother of another child who would be willing to help with some coverage, or maybe it's my parents jumping in. Or also, don't be afraid. Sometimes eavesdropping, like I would hear people say things and I would be like, that is such a good technique. Like, I want to use that. I'm going to use that. I've learned so much from sitting next to other people and overhearing them talk to students or talk to share a situation with the group. It's so important to just kind of share your experience with other people and learn from each other. Because I've been saved by other people. I haven't made mistakes in the same way that they did, because they were willing to share their story with me and I was willing to listen.
Well, thank you everyone for those answers. I have another question here in the Q&A space by Christy Rowley. We have so many wonderful examples of female transformational leaders. How does the practice of transformational leadership at Excelsior University empower faculty and staff to cultivate an environment characterized by mutual support, ongoing learning, and personal growth, all of which are integral to achieving the institution's goals of academic excellence and student success? So how does the practice of transformational leadership at Excelsior University empower faculty and staff to cultivate this environment?
Well, I'll just share very briefly, and it's about modeling it. We need to model it for each other, and so that our faculty and staff can be modeling it for our students.
To piggyback on that, Lori, I think it's up to each of us, right? We're all leaders across the institution, not just on this panel, but everyone listening and joining us as well. How do we build that within our teams? We can all lead with, even if we don't have the title of leadership, right? And how do we build that space for each other?
I can just add, our students are often are navigating an environment that wasn't built for them, right? So they're going back to school and they're not 18 to 21, the average college student age. They're doing things differently. And I think that that's what we do as leaders, as transformational leaders, is really, if one technique is not yielding the desired results, then we need to kind of think about what the next thing is. And that's what our students are doing, right? That maybe their first technique didn't work. They needed to go back to the drawing board and figure out what would work. So we need to adapt, knowing that our students are adapting, and we need to be empathetic and understanding to what they're going through. And so we can kind of live that here on the other end and create an environment that they can be successful in.
I was wondering if either of you are panelists, because we are out of questions from the audience, whether you have any question for the panel. Something that you would like to ask your peer panelists.
I have a suggestion, actually, or just something to ponder. How can we keep this conversation going? Moving forward. I saw a few comments around, different maybe quasi-structured activities that happen in the university where we could get together, share, lean into each other, share leadership and just our stories, and continue to lift each other up. So what might that look like? We don't need to answer it today, but just kind of an idea how we can continue to lift each other up.
I love that, Robin. And I just want to extend my thanks to this panel. We all have such different leadership styles and different expertise in areas. I've learned so much from each of you on this panel and just through our work together. So thank you for always being so open and forthcoming as we work together and solution together and build together.
I'm open to Robin's idea about continuing the conversation and thinking about practical ways that we can do that, whether it's coffee with colleagues or, a book group or I don't know what, but, there's lots of ideas I'm sure that folks will have, and I'm up for it.
And now that we have a women's rope team, right, we can take advantage of that and put some organization around that for regular conversation that we can facilitate. Well, let me express my deepest appreciation, not only for your time, but for your amazing insight and your willingness to share your experience with us. I know that makes you vulnerable, but you were right up front, and we have learned a lot from you today, and we learn a lot from you in a regular basis. So in closing, let me say, as we celebrate the International Women's Day and Women's History Month, let us honor the many today and the many other trailblazers who have paved the way for us and continue to break barriers. Women, panelists, and others, you are powerful, resilient, and such an example of achieving greatness. Your voices matter, and they matter a lot. Your stories matter. Your contributions matter. Keep pushing forward and never let anyone dim your light. Together, we can create a brighter future for all women and for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone who joined the session. as we discussed, we will find ways of following up on the conversation. Thank you, Pam, for your leadership, and marketing for your support. And we'll see you in our next conversation.